Nintendo was built on the concept of innovation. And yes, even this. But no, they really were. They gave you the best and most popular handheld consoles way before the PSP, from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Color and Game Boy Advance. They stepped it up in later years with the Nintendo DS and brought you 3D without the need to wear 3D glasses with the Nintendo 3DS. My first proper experience with Nintendo was with the Nintendo Wii, another popular console that every kid's mom and aunt knew about because of its motion control and family games that made use of it, like Wii Sports. At the time, the Nintendo Wii was a big part of gaming for me, mostly because I didn't know any better. The only other console I owned was a PS2, and my library consisted of too many licensed games to count. Aragon's Quest for Nintendo Wii, anyone? Besides one of my favorite Mario games on the Wii, I hardly had any games worth talking about, and I think most of the money I could have used to spend on more and better games was spent on this. But then came October 2016, the unveiling of Nintendo's latest and greatest creation, the Nintendo Switch. Yes, I'm well aware I skipped mentioning the Nintendo Wii U, thank you. The Nintendo Switch was a console named after its gimmick that you could play with it both as a handheld console or dock it and play on the big screen, allowing you to slide out the Joy-Cons to use as one or two controllers based on the game you're playing. No need to buy a whole other controller when you want to play some Smash with your friends. Just pass them the second Joy-Con. The Joy-Cons themselves also had motion control, allowing you to play various games in various different ways, such as Zelda Skyward Sword or Nintendo Switch Sports and Ring Fit, two renditions of the Nintendo Wii titles Sports and Wii Fit. The Nintendo Switch was great. I got it a little later, about the time Animal Crossing New Horizons released, because I needed to play that game. And then soon after I got it, the OLED model released. Well, fuck me, I guess. The Switch brought a lot of my childhood dreams to life, allowing me to play games I love like Skyrim on the go and giving me something to do on flights. But I'm glad I got it in recent years versus if it released when I was a child, because I don't think my cupboard could handle any more licensed games. Having it now allowed me to make good use of it, playing games I've always wanted to play that aren't from Nintendo, and also playing games like Zelda Breath of the Wild and Pokemon. And that's when we come to our main topic. It's 2023. The Switch is great, especially the OLED model, but it didn't add much to the console as a whole. Power-wise, the console is still lackluster, making a lot of ports of games seem like significant downgrades, and even though games like Breath of the Wild are open, expansive, and amazing, can you imagine how much better it would be at a higher resolution? Now, I don't use the Switch much in doctor mode, but when I do, limitations for some games unfortunately reveal itself a bit too much. Even if dock mode supports 1080p, it doesn't mean textures and so on in games were designed for it. Years after the Switch released, the Steam Deck as well as some other handhelds released, the Steam Deck being the more popular one. A gaming handheld that allows you to play PC games on the go with better specs than the Switch. Now here's my problem. Circumstances when the Switch was being designed and developed led to the Switch being what it is, and don't get me wrong, it still is a great console, but I think we all are ready for an upgrade. For years, people have been speculating about a Switch Pro. They did it all the way till the OLED release, only to be disappointed by it. I think it's possible for Nintendo to design an upgrade, and I think it's about time too. Nintendo is a huge company, and most of their games are not up to standards of current gen games, and that's perfectly fine. Except most of their exclusive games are also priced like this, and they don't drop in price. Even the non-exclusive games are more expensive. I'm sorry, why do I have to pay this amount of money for the Peppa Pig game when PS4 gets it for half that? The Switch has so much potential to be better. Right now, the only thing the Switch has going for it besides being a handheld is that it's a Nintendo Switch console, and it's the only place you can play Nintendo exclusives. Imagine if the idea for the Switch came from Xbox. It might have been popular as a modern handheld, but not nearly as popular as the Switch, and the reason for that is Nintendo games. Nintendo games don't get put on any other platforms besides Nintendo, and that's why it's always worth owning a Nintendo console. While Xbox and PlayStation have competition against each other, Nintendo isn't part of that, and that's because it offers games no other platform offers, while also having ports from other consoles. PlayStation has many exclusives and Xbox hardly has as much anymore, but Nintendo has a massive amount of exclusive titles that are just so different from other platforms. Nintendo Nintendo is not trying to be like other companies. They don't try to release these really realistic looking games like other companies and opt for the more animated or stylized approach that makes their games fresh and timeless. I've seen so many people that aren't Nintendo fans shit on Tears of the Kingdom because, in their words, it's the same game as Breath of the Wild with very little added. Well, if you want to pick that apart, why not bring it to all platforms and AAA games? Call of Duty, Assassin's Creed, even God of War. Granted, God of War did, in my opinion, the same thing that Zelda did, stuck to a formula for a sequel and added more story elements to it. The difference between those AAA titles and titles like Tears of the Kingdom and God of War is the passion put behind it. So much of Assassin's Creed is the same every game, and that's not because they had a formula that worked, it's just because they're trying to put out as many games as they can, since it's their most popular IP. For the case of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and it may not be Nintendo but even God of War Ragnarok, why does it need to be significantly different in terms of its gameplay when its gameplay is what made it so good? Why try to fix something that just isn't broken? And Nintendo has a lot of exclusives that played on this, especially its biggest and most well-known IP, Mario. Mario Bros has had many variety of games over the years, from simple platforming to 3D platforming, RPGs, sports games, open world platforming, and so much more. But that doesn't mean Nintendo didn't have a lot of disappointing games as well. The most notable one is Pokemon. The Pokemon games followed the exact same formula for over 2 decades, but they changed it only a little with Sword and Shield, and then eventually tested new grounds with Arceus. Scarlet and Violet faced so many performance hiccups on release as well, and that's when pieces started to fall into place. The hardware is holding them back. Nintendo has so much potential to make amazing titles that are unique and groundbreaking for the modern day, regardless of whether it looks realistic or not. But in some way or another, the Nintendo Switch is holding them back. I mean, let's be honest, the Nintendo Switch wasn't even as powerful as the last gen consoles it released aside, such as PS4 and Xbox One. With the success of the Nintendo Switch, it should be clear by now that if a new console would have been made an upgrade to the Switch, then it would be just as successful, if not more so. A more powerful console will mean less restraints for game developers and gamers alike. Personally, I just want to see what a new gen of Nintendo looks like. It's not the first time Nintendo hasn't been powered other consoles. Even then, Nintendo Wii was a time when the PS3 and Xbox 360 was a thing. I get that Nintendo is targeted mainly at a much different audience, but it doesn't mean that the audience wouldn't benefit from a more powerful console. We really are starting to see its age, especially every time there's a new Nintendo Direct. The last Nintendo Direct was so underwhelming with its game reveals. It definitely had some good ones, but most of them were meh. I love my Switch and the few games I have for it. I mean, I got the console at the time the PS5 was released, and just to play Animal Crossing and Breath of the Wild at first. I could have gotten a PS5, but I chose not to because I've gotten a PlayStation all my life and wanted something different. And I love Nintendo, and I just wanted to not make the same mistakes that led to a lot of other companies being treated like the cousin you always used to play with, but eventually got tired of when you realize how much of a snob they were. I'm looking at you, Disney. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, why not subscribe and hit that like for more. I'm always looking for recommendations of games and stuff to talk about, so if you have anything in mind, feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, was Nintendo part of your childhood, and if so, which was your first Nintendo console? I'm curious. That's all for now. Goodbye.